monitoring of our own behavior and whether or not that is an effective form of behavior management. What do you guys think? You think you can monitor your own behavior and make changes for yourself? Huh? What do you say? Yeah, you are pretty biased about your own behavior, right? Yeah.
I think you have to be. No, and like it makes it a lot easier to do what you want.
Yeah.
Like really look at yourself and really be like, okay.
Yeah. Because how many of you have ever started like I'm gonna like a New Year's resolution? Right. How many of you have ever like actually completed that New Year's resolution to a point where you've made long-lasting changes? Spence says yes. Caitlin says yes. Well, there's a few of you, just these three over here. So you guys, yeah. What was your New Year's resolution change?
I used to be obsessed with like really strawberry candies, and I eat them like every single it was my substitute for chewing gum.
Okay.
So I managed to stop eating those. It seems small, but like.
Well, yeah, but that's, I mean, it's a habit. It was still a behavior that you did really repetitively every day, right? Yeah. Anybody else you want to share, Seth?
2 years ago,
What was your like justification? I like to ask every vegetarian their reason for being a vegetarian.
My thing was to see if I can actually do it. I mean, I don't think like seem like actually do it.
I think, right, environmental benefits, but I've also had people say just because they didn't like meat is why they're vegetarian. So it is a challenge for you. Got it. And Spence, what was yours?
I mean, I've had a real time.
Especially giving up nicotine. That's a hard habit to break. Yeah, that's a hard habit to break.
I smoked for my whole but like probably about 13 up. So
yeah.
That was hard. That's the hardest thing I swear to quit. This is so hard.
No, I mean, there's research to show that is brain wise, that's the hardest thing to quit. Worst withdrawals, which substance is the hardest to quit based on the withdrawal symptoms? Alcohol, yeah. Like if you are truly, yeah, you can die from alcohol withdrawal. Just a fun question I like to throw in there. If you're not medically monitored, yeah. And now we're talking like those people who drink and essentially don't know what it's like to not have alcohol in their system.
Like wake up in the morning.
Opiates, yes, but they break down differently, so you're not as likely, it depends on your opiate use, but yeah, to the same level. But yes, like if you were severely addicted to alcohol, withdrawals can be rough. But like methamphetamine withdrawals aren't quite as bad, typically because the half-life's really short and it's like processed differently out of your system. So I mean, if you think about people who take like caffeine and Adderall and things like that, not as bad. Alcohol, not great. All right. So self-monitoring can be effective, but it does take a lot of, what was the word you guys used? Discipline. That's a good word. Yes. So today, you guys are going to track how many times you like look at the clock, check to see what time it is, look at your phone, or if you're on a computer, leave the tab that's relevant for class. Huh? Challenge accepted. So it should be easy for you because you don't have a watch on. I don't see your phone.
It's in my lap.
It's in your lap. Yeah, and it's an emergency or something. Yeah.
There's no clock.
I know. Oh,
I
man.
could make it an exception.
Yeah, just leave your phone on your desk. There you go. Yeah, it's fine. All right, so you'll track how many times you were distracted.
Been there for a day to do that somewhere.
No. If you leave the tab for class, like how many times you're like, oh, let me check my email real quick while I'm lecturing. How many times you daydream or think of something unrelated to class. Yeah, you might need a piece of paper to tally. So you're going to tally every time you're off topic. All right. That's it. That's all you got to do. Right. And have you guys seen the movie, The Social Dilemma? How many of you guys have watched it yet? Raise your hand high if you have watched The Social Dilemma. It's a documentary. It's about our addiction to social media. I haven't. Look, I don't have time to read a book. Is it short? Yeah. I'll look for it on audiobook. I spend a lot of time in my car. That's the best place for me to read. And it's safer if it's on audio versus like in front of me. Yeah, because right, the joke, that's the meme right here. A bunch of my friends are coming over this evening to play on their phones, right? So how many times are you with peers and everybody's like, yeah, and not actually like engaging with one another. But The Social Dilemma talks all about that. So ways around how to fix that are really, one, deleting apps if possible, or turning off notifications so you don't get a notification every time somebody likes your post on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. All right, so essentially self-management, pretty simple idea that you, the self, the individual, are the person in charge of making the behavior change and implementing the intervention and monitoring the behavioral outcomes. That's it. So that's the whole lecture. So we're done. So how many times does everybody have? No, I'm just kidding. That's not it. But I mean, it's not a long presentation today. You guys are going to thank me later. It's the class before fall break, right? We don't need to drag it out. Okay, so self-monitoring, a procedure where you're systematically, so like with thought, not just like, oh, I'm going to change my behavior and I'm not really going to plan it out, where you're systematically observing your own behavior, recording how often it happens or when it doesn't happen, when you want it to happen, of a specific behavior. So right now you are all monitoring your off-task behavior. Sometimes it might be referred to as self-recording or self-observation. Same idea applies. It doesn't matter the word you use. It's pretty much all the same. That you are the one checking in on your behavior. So this was originally developed just as like a general method for data collection across settings. So like think about a student who has like 6 or 7 different teachers in a day, right? So if I ask 6 or 7 different teachers to do it, they're all different people and they're all going to collect data differently. And if I put it a little bit on the individual to monitor their behavior, then it's that same person kind of standardized across all settings. Okay. And then the other piece, okay, so their own behavior is the key there. But then the other piece here is that the therapeutic implications are based on reactivity. So what this really means is that the measurement of your behavior is almost the intervention itself. So by pointing out the behavior that I want you to change, you are more likely to go, oh, I'm off task. I got to get back on task, right? And so that's kind of the hope. I don't have to give you anything more complicated than that. Now, I should also tie it into extrinsically motivated things to make it more effective. But generally speaking, that kind of observation of your behavior is enough to change your behavior. You're looking at me like I'm crazy, Bree. And I am kind of crazy, but.
I keep reaching the link.
Yes, but see, now your behavior has changed because you were going to text her and you would have texted her had I not told you that you had to tell me every time you checked on your device while we were in class today.
But the observation of our behavior.
Is enough to be the intervention. So like, I don't have to say, this is what you do if you don't, like, if you only check your phone 3 times or fewer, you're only off task 3 times or fewer during class today, then you all would get a reward, right? I don't even have to offer you the reward. Just you monitoring your behavior is going to change your behavior. You're still looking at me like I am a crazy person. So weight loss is complicated. Addictions are complicated because there's a brain-based need, and your screens are similar. Like you have a brain-based need to your screen after a while. We all have a screen addiction. But with so the issue with that is that the reinforcement of a sweet or a food or that is competing with the like self-monitoring reinforcement and monitoring your own behavior and weight loss. There are, yeah. So like metabolism, things like that. Same with drugs and alcohol. There becomes more of like you're adding something in. The screen, although it's addictive and your brain is addicted in a very similar way as it is to caffeine or nicotine or things like that, it's easier to break it because you're not like actually changing the hormone, dopamine, serotonin type responses in the exact same way. So when the procedures are more obtrusive, like more in your face, it tends to be when you're going to have the most reactivity to change. Okay. So essentially, if I go in and I watch your behavior and I track to see how many times you're off task, and then I say, hey, now I want you to monitor it and track it yourself, we'll probably notice a decline in behavior just for that reason alone. Because now I've also made it more obvious to you, and that behavior that you're engaging in is more obnoxious to you because it's taking you off track. And now I also have to make this tally mark. So it's more than just being off track and off task or looking at my phone. I'm having to do all these other things. So when do you feel like self-monitoring would be an effective or appropriate thing to use?
I think like if you're studying for tests, you're monitoring yourself. Like I know that I personally have a lot of problems with that.
Mhm.
So if I'm like, okay, I have to study for this test, I'll start reading and I'll be like, yeah, and I'll look over. And then if somebody texts me, I'll answer them. And then before you know it, like 15 minutes just went by and I only had an hour to study.
Mhm.
And I just lost 15 minutes because I was off.
Right. But what if we implemented a self-monitoring procedure so that you tracked how many times you were off task while you studied, and you set yourself a limit and you were like, I'm not going to exceed this many off task opportunities during my study time?
Yes.
What were we going to say, Spence?
I was just going to say, I've taken several of those. You tend to do things when you're nervous, like move around too much, say, and they're like, hey, I want you to count how many times you say, or fidget with something like a pencil or, and then you realize how stupid those things are when you're out there and you're talking and you notice them.
And then once you start noticing it more in yourself, you notice it more in other people, and then it really bugs you. And have you ever been to a presentation? This is really bad for like job talks for when people are applying for faculty positions. And they come in and they do this job talk. And it's because they're nervous and they're anxious, and you absolutely would do the same thing. But there are moments where I have been petty enough to pull out a paper and just tally every time somebody says or like. Not undergrads in a presentation in class. I'm talking about like people with PhDs coming up in front. Yes. And sometimes you say or because you're thinking and you're off track, but it's those people who like every other word are saying or and this is like their research that they should know, right? Like 100%. You made this study and they still do it, and you're like, I don't tell them I do it, Caitlin.
I'm gonna be like, oh, my time's
I'm doodling a flower on the side and then a tally and then some. No. I just make petals on the flower. That's what I do. That's it. It's not obvious for every time they say or up.
It's no longer a flower. Yeah.
Right. It's just got a little crazy. All right. So studying is a good example. What else?
Monitoring how many times you work that.
Yeah, we could monitor how many times we reach for a snack. And the goal there would be to improve our health, right? So health related things, working out more frequently. Oh man, I said it. I've been trying really hard. I made it like 10 minutes without saying it. Now I'm going to think about it myself the whole time. Living a healthier life and working out and setting goals for yourself so that you're like, all right, yes, I'm going to work out for 15 minutes at 5 out of 7 days of the week. And I'm going to monitor, and nobody else knows if I went to the gym or not. The only person, if I track this incorrectly, that knows if I'm lying is me. The only person I'm impacting is myself. That is a big one. So study habits, health related things.
About like raising, like, well, kind of tying in this, but like raising children, and how you are reinforcing or not reinforcing their behavior. And it's very easy because, like, I have kids, so it's very easy to try and stay like consistent, but sometimes you're just like, whoa, and then you're not consistent, and you just set yourself all the way down. And yeah, so I try to
monitoring your parenting skills.
I really do that.
Absolutely.
Hard.
It's hard. And it's also hard when you're emotional, like in the moment, because as a human, you can easily get overstimulated and get frustrated. Floor.
Like monitoring or you've been like in the whole month or writing down your
How you spend your whole month, writing down tips. Oh, yes. Like monitoring your income. I will only eat out this many times so I can save money. It is hard because then what happens when you get out of class late or you get out of work late or you're tired or you have a big exam and then just something happens and you're like, oh man, I already met my max for the week, but I do not have the energy to cook. And the only person this impacts is me. And so I'm still going to do it.
Store and you don't have anything in your life.
Yeah, I don't even have anything in my house, so I'm going to have to go out and eat. Bummer. There's like a bunch. Hold on. Ava first, I think, and then Seth, then you, Bria. So, well, I have a theory that most people with ADHD are really terrible at self-monitoring their own behavior, and whether you take that to think anything further about yourself is on you. But most people with ADHD cannot successfully self-monitor because they are too impulsive. And this is about impulse control.
It's so bad that I would sign up that shock thing. If it wasn't like dire, like I would sign up for like shock. Yeah.
Just shock me. Just do it. Yeah. Ryan Farmer, who's our director for our psych services center, he has the shocking things, and he does it to himself if he gets off task.
Oh, really? Yeah. I need that.
Because it's not just the self-monitoring, which he is doing. He needs it more advanced than that because FYI, most people who go to graduate school are impulsive enough to think, it'd be really fun going to school forever.
Right.
And same with people in the military. Spoiler alert. It'd be really fun going and putting my life in harm's way every day. Police officers, pilots. Yeah, there's a lot of professions that almost like being ADHD makes you better at that job because you have to be somewhat impulsive to think, it'd be fun. No. So with that, Seth was next.
So like I've been trying to spend my time to go down, but that's so much harder.
Yes, and then it's all a scam. But also DoorDash rates went up when gas went up. And the first time I spent like $50 on like 2 items from Chick-fil-A was the moment I was like, fine, I will get in my car and drive to Chick-fil-A and pick this up. I will not have you deliver this for $53. That's not even including the tip yet. Yeah. And that's with the Dash Pass. And that's living a mile from Chick-fil-A. So I know I have every reason to just go to get up out of my house. I should walk there, really burn off the calories, self-monitor it. It's a whole thing. All right. So spending money, healthy lifestyle, parenting, studying. You guys haven't even hit the big one. The big one that most people use for self-monitoring, besides Ava, because she admitted that it doesn't work for herself. It doesn't work for me either. What? Swearing less. No. And actually, I'll tell you in a second, I'll tell you a study why that's, don't try to get rid of that behavior.
I can't.
But with swearing, would you consider swearing a good habit or a bad habit?
Yeah. I don't swear. That's why I swear at everyone else as much as possible.
And when we talk about stimulus control, we'll talk about why you don't swear in front of your mom. Because she indicates to you that punishment is available for engaging in this behavior. Yes. Yeah, but that's still.
I know.
Yeah. Please don't look at me with those eyes. You know, the sad eyes, the disappointed eyes. Yes. Just be mad at me. Yell at me. Don't look at me with the pity. It's okay. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. It's bad habits. Yeah. It's breaking bad habits, which can include quitting nicotine, quitting any sort of drug or alcohol, picking your fingernails, sucking your thumb, any sort of thing like that. So self-monitoring, big things, right? It's easier if you're breaking a habit to replace it with an alternative behavior than it is to just cold turkey quit the thing and not like ever do it again. So what'd you replace your nicotine habit with? Exactly. You couldn't not do it completely cold turkey. You had to put something else in your mouth. And that typically is actually why most people are so addicted to nicotine. It's not just that the nicotine makes your brain, it's the whole the whole process of
Everything you do.
it's
Forget with driving. Driving is the first part. I would go on drive and have a cigarette.
and you needed it to calm you. And if you didn't have it to calm you, it made you more anxious, which made it more difficult to drive and think and be able to react.
For some reason, it doesn't really.
So it actually does in the moment. This is
Right.
actually like cannabis. Cannabis is notorious for doing this. In the moment, it calms you. And then as soon as the effects have worn off, you're actually more anxious than you were before you took the substance, which makes you need the substance more. And so when people tell you they're not addicted to cannabis, it's because they don't have the same like addictive features of like meth or cocaine or heroin, but you have created yourself that the only way to reduce your anxiety is to use nicotine or cannabis. And so the same thing kind of happens. And increasingly so, most people who take cannabis really regularly will complain about a lot of symptoms related to anxiety that if they just quit using it, they wouldn't experience anymore. It's not floor.
So I saw this TikTok of this girl who was like a nicotine addict and she quit and she was supposed to be 2 months free off of it, but she ordered like it's like replacing for nicotine like a sleeping, like smoking or something like that, or just like so everybody in the comments was like, oh, you really didn't quit because you just going back to it and stuff like that. So like I mean, technically she didn't quit, right? Because she went back to like the habits of the sensation of like blowing.
As long as it doesn't have nicotine and she has just replaced it with a new habit,
Yeah.
which is what Spence did. He's replaced it with gum. Later, he might have jaw problems from chewing too much gum, right? But you're not addicted to nicotine, right? Is that what I said? No, that's not it either. It's then swapping to the mint and then not needing anything. That's the in between. You got to fade it out. What?
So I used to be really addicted to gum, but I stopped eating gum when I started vaping.
Yeah. Also a fun fact that if you don't know this about yourself, most people have oral seeking behaviors like smoking or gum chewing because they have low iron.
Yeah, I don't like that. I'm taking vitamins.
I'm not calling you out specifically, maybe other
Well, you took
people
a
in the
sip,
room.
actually wrote that. I don't know if you call, that's.
You-
sipping.
You were talking. Do you want me to look at, let me look at the ceiling when you talk now, Caitlin? Yeah, I won't make eye contact with you. Yeah, no, it's not about you. Yeah, so, I think these are generally the applications. You guys have given some really good examples of things that you have done, but some other ones, when we talked about weight management, there's like calorie counting. I don't love that. Yeah, actually, I mean, like,
That's not helpful.
don't do that, actually. It's terrible. It's actually really bad, huh? No, counting carbs, counting calories, all of that is actually not really great. Yes, all food is good food in moderation. We can also do this for like number of math problems or number of things you've completed on a homework assignment. You can complete them or completed them correctly. Number of pages read. Any of you, yeah, if you're a parent, your kids get assigned the number of pages that they're supposed to read. But even as an adult, you're like, okay, when I finish this chapter, then I'll stop, I'll put this down. You probably do some of this without realizing it. I mean, reading for fun, not reading for class. No. Reading for class is a completely different. That's punishment. But number of pages read, like for fun, right? You might kind of track that. For typing, tracking words per minute. So something else that's really helpful if you're a provider, doing treatment integrity checklists. So like making a list of these are all the things I need to cover in a session. Did I do all these things? So it's more for you as the therapist, not so much for the client, but rather like if you've ever been to therapy or done something like that, it's like, okay, I got to make sure I cover all these things. That's true for any type, like even physical therapy, occupational therapy, they have goals, they have things that they need to do. And this helps keep us on track as well. All technically types of self-monitoring, checking your speed while driving. I probably should be better at that. I mean, it is what it is. All right. And then what is the big one that you guys are all personally doing right now in class this semester? The SAFMEDS project is an example of self-monitoring, right?
Yeah.
Sure. If you're doing it. All right. And then also like checking to see if you're on task. If you're really ADHD, you have to make it a little more outside of yourself and like set your watch to vibrate every so many minutes. And you're like, oh, am I still on track? Oh crap, I'm on the Facebook tab again. How'd I get here? Exit. No, that's just me. I'm like pulling up the computer to like write a report. And all of a sudden I'm on my phone and I didn't write the report. Yeah. So, all right. So it starts with just monitoring our behavior, which can in and of itself be a good intervention for certain types of things. And then as we get better at self-monitoring and being honest with ourselves, we can then do some self-evaluation where we look back and we go, well, how well did we do yesterday at staying on task in class? How well did we do studying for that test? And Ava's going to count how many times she yawns in class. How many did you have? It's like oh, great. No, it's okay. It's okay. Everybody's tired. That's why we're getting fall break on Monday and Tuesday, right? And then over time, we self-evaluate and then we can go back and modify our intervention and say, okay, maybe I'll actually tie this to something. So I had a professor who taught me this information that I'm teaching you right now, share a story about when he was writing his own dissertation. that he created a separate Windows on his PC, right? So, when you log in, so he did a different login that was when he was doing his dissertation. And it didn't have anything fun other than like Microsoft Word. Okay. And all of the PDFs necessary to work on his dissertation. And after so many minutes of work, he would then award himself like a Skittle. And I was like, here's my problem. I would just be eating the whole bowl of Skittles while I did the work and not after so many minutes, just like sitting there, right, eating this bowl of Skittles. But he said he had enough self-control and discipline that he could one at a time after 5 minutes of like typing.
I think.
I would just lose
just
track
eat
of
the
what I
whole
was
thing.
doing and eat it. When
I did something like this and I don't know if it works because I like new, like with ADHD, I like new things, or if it works because I'm protective, but what I would do is I realized giving myself 5 minute breaks between doing something, and I was like, okay, whatever you wanna do, Facebook, watch a part of a movie, whatever, you can do it, and when that time goes like off, you get back to work. It only lasted for like a week, but
yes,
it was really effective for him.
it's really for adults with ADHD, chunking of things is easy, like a good technique to use for self-monitoring. So like, I'm going to do this for this many minutes, and like you hyper focus on that thing for that many minutes, and then you set your timer, and then when it goes off, you take the 5 minute break. You can do that with like cleaning tasks. That's like a big thing on TikTok right now. Like moms on TikTok will really demonstrate like, look, I'm just going to focus on cleaning this kitchen for 10 minutes and whatever I get done in 10 minutes is what I get done. And most of the time, if that's like all you're focused on and you set that timer, you'll finish the whole task in the 10 minutes. But if you allow yourself to go, okay, well, I'm going to do that. Oh, now I got to go. I'm going to go grab all the dishes from around the house. Oh, crap. Somebody's shoes are there. That's not where these go. And then all of a sudden you're like, I didn't clean the kitchen and I don't feel like I accomplished anything. But if you can stay in the kitchen and just focus on the kitchen for 10 minutes, you can finish the task. So all of that kind of just builds on itself, starts with the self-monitoring. Sometimes that's enough for some crazy people. I am not one of them. Some self-evaluation and self-management. All right. So how many times were you guys distracted and off task? Anybody want to share? Twice, 15. You said 2? How many? 8? 4? Nice. I don't believe you. There's no way your brain didn't wander at least once.
For my brain, like,
Okay.
I've been like hyper focused on like
This. Got it. Nice.
So like somebody started talking, I'll like it's long.
Nice. Yes. 4, how many? 0. 3. 13? Wow. Well, we had a lot of low numbers since you said you're 15 over here. 5. Giovanni, 3. Kerrigan. Twice. Are you lying and saying it's twice?
No, I said, can I lie to say it's fun?
Oh, 5.
I dated a lot. 3 times it was on the phone. One time it was for picking up a shirt and thinking, wow, I have a lot of hair on this shirt. And then most of it was. I have little markers to tell me too. Wait, just like that kind of.
And 16.
Like, okay, so down means none, up means off task, but most of it's station. And then I was like, well, does that count as off task? If it's about, like, what she said, if it's about,
I don't know. That's hard.
so now I'm tallying and like questioning, does this how it count if it's about the task? Because if it's about the task, it's not the task.
Are we
And then
over?
I sit there
But now we're overthinking it. And now we've
Right.
totally gotten off topic.
Yeah.
And no, but that's, yeah,
Yeah.
right. And so now so everybody tally. Okay. Everybody go ahead and just mark your tally. Everybody's off task right now. All right. But so like how obtrusive was that whole process for you and monitoring your behavior?
It made sure that I didn't work. As like focusing on you the entire time. Everything you said was interesting, but just being able to keep my focus on you, my brain is like, okay, time to step out. I'm like, but I'm gonna have to tally. So it was like,
Oh, don't do it. Yeah. Also, the human brain can only attend for so long. So, Bria.
For me, I just want to mention that this is very, I like this, but then like my stupid brain, like, I got this new like oil like fragrance and bottle fragrance from this website, and like I keep spelling it. I was like, wow, I need to get more, and I was like, dang it, and then I found it on my phone, and I was like, another one.
Yes, that's it. Because you're like, everything in my environment is interesting. And yeah, at any given moment, your brain goes off track. Spence and then Ava.
I think that I was more engaged in listening.
Because you were,
There was one time where I did this and I looked at the time. I was
Oh,
you know,
yeah. And don't worry, I won't change your vocabulary. You're allowed to say shit.
I was thinking I'm watching on my computer, but now that I forgot about the shirt and stuff, I was looking at the floor and zoning out.
And yawning.
I didn't know.
And that's actually the problem with most habits, that even when you engage in self-monitoring, sometimes we don't notice our own habits until somebody else points them out to us, which is when you do those public speaking classes and other people then tell you, here's how many times you said or like sometimes you can catch it, but sometimes you can't.
Every single day, like every 5 minutes.
I mean, mine's pretty,
Super difficult. It doesn't matter how interested I am in something, like. Well, you know, yeah.
there are people you can talk to.
I know, right?
Most people who are really high IQ or bright, who have ADHD, don't know that they have ADHD until they get into graduate school. I can tell you the total number of med students. It's actually like, think about, the joke that all doctors have terrible handwriting. It's really because they have ADHD, and all people with ADHD have terrible handwriting.
So that is when you get off.
Yeah.
I literally was just diagnosed like 39. I was literally just diagnosed like a couple months ago.
Mhm.
And my handwriting sucked. I have like diet. I all got.
You have doctor handwriting. That's, yeah. Huh?
Yeah. Chicken scratch. I do, I'm all.
Is it, or, go ahead.
Fun fact is one of my favorites is like practicing my wife, so I have to check with you and I.
Yeah. And now we're all off topic
Oh.
and down the rabbit hole. So one more tally mark, 2 for Caitlin. So only a few of it did it make you less likely to engage in the problem behavior. Some of you, it distracted you more by having to monitor your own behavior. Now, personal differences there, but generally speaking, it's actually a pretty easy intervention in a classroom setting. Especially for a kid with ADHD, I'm going to implement a self-monitoring intervention where they're monitoring their behavior, but their teacher is also monitoring their behavior so that they can check in at the end of that class or that lesson block and say, how well do you feel like you did raising your hand and waiting your turn in class? And that ADHD kid's always like, I never yawned. I did amazing. And then the teacher's like, actually, this is how many times it happened, right? And so if we don't point it out to them, they'll never be aware of it. And people with really bad habits or with ADHD are just less aware of how their behavior impacts other people. So by having them self-monitor is one piece, but also coming in and observing it and showing them like how accurate their self-monitoring is, right? So when we went back through and you all were like, here's how many times, and then Caitlin was like, it was 20. And we're all like, wow. But she explained why. You guys all realized that you maybe underestimated some of your off-task behavior in class, right? So all that to say, we're going to take a quiz. So token economies in theory sound super easy. But oftentimes, similar to timeout, can be done in very terrible or overly complicated ways and make life more difficult for teachers or parents than they need to be. But in general, a token economy is like a regular old economy out in the world. So we engage in a specific behavior like going to work, and then we're reinforced for that by getting a tradable commodity or our paycheck. And then we can use that paycheck to exchange for goods or services. So my favorite thing is when parents tell me, right, it's the idea of Vince Vaughn and Jennifer Aniston fighting over doing the dishes. Well, they should just clean their room because they should just clean their room. And my response to that is, well, do you go to work just because you're supposed to go to work every day? Would you continue to go to work if you didn't get a paycheck? Everybody except for the military, because they still have to sometimes. They end up getting paid later, but like there's a time where they're not getting a paycheck. But the argument is most people will eventually quit. Some people faster than others. The more frequent you're paid, the sooner you realize you're not being paid, the faster you're going to quit. So if you're paid monthly, then it's going to take you a little bit longer to realize you haven't been paid. It's going to have less of an impact, and sort of. And so you might work a little bit longer. But token economies are no different from that. And so I'm always like, we still have to reinforce these behaviors at home. You want them to make their bed, you want them to do the dishes, then we have to pay them to do these things. Eventually, over time, we don't have to pay them as much. They learn to just do these things because, I don't know, as adults, we just have to do these things. But every now and then we should still say, hey, thanks for doing the dishes. I appreciate you doing that without throwing a fit and whining about it. So token economies essentially occur because we have a target behavior, something that we're looking to increase. So in a classroom, it might be raising our hand, it might be sitting quietly, waiting our turn, standing in line, keeping our hands to ourselves, different things like that. And then we are going to give them a token, which is a generalized conditioned reinforcer. So we will say, good job doing, and then fill in the blank behavior that they've engaged in. And then they collect all their tokens and they can buy some backup reinforcers that are the things that are actually reinforcing to them. But that token gives teachers or parents that immediate opportunity to praise that behavior in the moment when it's going to be most effective, without always having to have really cool reinforcers readily available. All right, so a few things that we think about when we're planning for a token economy. We're thinking about our tokens. What are we going to use? We're going to think about a schedule of delivery. So how often am I giving tokens? What our backup reinforcers should be, and how often should we get to go and exchange our tokens? So tokens can be as simple as you need them to be, and it can be like play money with different denominations, so that you have like, oh, this was a $5 reward, this was a $100 reward, right? If we're using Monopoly money. We could use pennies and all other sorts of coins to do this. Now people worry like, well, but that's real money. But don't worry, they're going to exchange it back to you. So you don't really have to have like an unlimited amount of pennies at your disposal, because you're going to give them 5 pennies. They're going to give you 5 pennies back later to buy the other thing that they wanted. It can be cotton balls in a jar, like the little fluff balls, whatever, poker chips, doesn't matter, whatever you have easily accessible to you. It's kind of what we go with. It can help if we incorporate sight and sound. So like in the jar, they can see the money building up and it makes sound, right? Like a casino. We want to pick things that are durable. So like they're not going to break down easily. But another thing you have to think about with young children, really more my middle school and high school students, is the counterfeitability. So if it's pennies and they go home and they get their own pennies, and they bring them to school and they put them in their jar, then man, it looks like they've had a really good week. And you're like, this doesn't make sense because you haven't had a really good week. So we don't want them to be able to make them themselves. So like if you were to use Monopoly money, the teacher should go through and like initial all of the money. So they can't just bring from home their own Monopoly money. Same's true for at home with parents. No way for them to create their own tokens. Ease of replacement. So like if you run out of tokens, you want to be able to easily get more tokens. And then ease of storage. Nothing that takes up too much space or is too complicated here. What I tell parents and teachers, like, don't go to Pinterest, like just make this simple because you want it to be usable. If you go to Pinterest and you go way over the top with this, you're going to spend a lot of time and energy on something, and then you're probably not going to end up using it, and you've wasted a lot of time over planning. All right, schedule of delivery. So as we learned with our reinforcement schedules, it is best if we give them a lot initially. So like lots of tokens, really like every time they're sitting, every time they're raising their hand, we're just like, you get a token, you get a token, right? And eventually you're going to fade more into a variable schedule of reinforcement. When we're planning this with a teacher or parent, oftentimes I go and I say, now tell me all the things that you want to work on. And if they say, I don't want them to blurt out anymore, I don't want them to do this, I don't want them to do that, I'm going to take all of that and I'm going to make sure that it is positively worded in the opposite way so that we are reinforcing those alternative behaviors. So if I don't want them to blurt out, obviously I want them to sit quietly. So we're going to praise sitting quietly. And setting up about 3 behaviors to start so that teachers aren't overwhelmed with like having to look out for every behavior out there that could possibly happen. And then we will think about how many tokens each behavior gets. And on an individual basis, some kids may get more or less for different behaviors because that's a harder behavior for them to do. Right? So like some kids are maybe more hyperactive and impulsive. So if they're sitting quietly in their seat, then I'm going to maybe give them like 5 because that's a really big deal for them versus the kid who's always sitting quietly in their seat. I still want to praise that because in a classroom intervention, me praising somebody else for doing the right thing is actually going to make somebody else do the right thing too. Because they're like, oh, Kiana got reinforced for staying awake in class today. I know it's all right. Had a long weekend. And so Kiana got reinforced for staying awake in class. So I'm also going to stay awake in class today. And then you kind of see how it will build on itself without having to always reinforce every kid. All right. So backup reinforcers. This is sometimes where a token economy fails. Sometimes it's because teachers don't give enough reinforcers. Sometimes it's because the stuff that you can buy with your tokens sucks. All right. So we want a variety of things to choose from. If you're doing this on like an individual scale, we want to go and pick like with the child. What's something you want to work for, right? What's something you want to work for? I'm not going to buy stuff that I want if that's not something the child actually wants, right? And so having a large variety of things, letting the children pick, and it doesn't have to be things that cost money. It can be things like, you know, sitting at the teacher's desk for the lesson, a popcorn party, going on an errand for the teacher, taking something to the office. So like you can add in really silly things. Like my kid's teacher has one that's like, bring a stuffy to school, right? And they get a little thing and they can bring a stuffed animal to school. My child's like, I can one. I'm like, I couldn't care less. All right. But so like things like that didn't cost the teacher any money. It also didn't end up with like extra crap at my house that I really don't want either. So lots of variety here, lots of really cool stuff. Thinking small too. You don't have this endless supply of space, so we want it to be small stuff. Having a menu with like a cost associated with it. It's like everything can't be the same. And so you have like lower tiered stuff, like maybe a piece of candy is 1 token and bringing a stuffy to school is 5 tokens. I don't know. So you kind of think through it. Yes, Quinn. What I do at my job, yeah, I help parents make this for themselves at home. And then I coach them through it because oftentimes they're like, well, I did something like that. And you're like, do it well. That's why you're here. So. Yeah. And so then over a few weeks, you kind of are like, okay, so what worked, what didn't work, and you problem solve with them and you figure out where their gaps are. Most of the time their gaps are because they picked really stupid backup reinforcers. And then we're going to talk about the next thing that they often do wrong is not allowing enough opportunity to trade their tokens.
I had a question on, so I guess it's like if, like someone implements this, like this need to just potentially the child just expecting to be reinforced for all of their behavior.
Yes. And we don't want that. And that's why we very quickly have to fade to the variable schedule of reinforcement. But also, if you're doing this in a classroom setting with multiple kids, very rarely will that happen because there's so many kids to divide your attention across. You're going to miss a lot of behaviors. And then I'll establish rules if that starts to happen, where if the kid comes up and goes, quietly, and you didn't reinforce me, and I'm going to be like, and now you're really not going to reinforce. In fact, go ahead and give me a token because you're not going to remind me to reinforce you.
I'll be that child, like, I said quietly.
Yeah, and I'd be like, yeah, if you do that to me again, yeah, you're gonna look at token. No, because you also don't want to create that type of adult either, right? You don't want that adult to go into the workplace and always be like to their boss, here's how awesome I am and I need you to give me a raise. And like, we should all advocate for ourselves and ask for a raise, but like, you can't do it every day, every time you do something awesome at work. Right, exactly. Where's my praise? That's right. And you can think it all you want, but like, there's a balance in self-advocacy and like doing it at appropriate times. But if you do it too much, teachers and bosses will get highly annoyed with you. You hold it till later. Right. All right. Schedule of exchange is the other top area that teachers mess up on, or parents. If they don't give you enough opportunity to trade in your tokens, then those tokens become worthless, right? If I don't get to use my tokens to buy something, then they have no value to me. So you need the store to open 3 times a day at the beginning, maybe 5 times. At the end of every kind of thing that happens, you're like, all right, let's go. Maybe you're getting a piece of candy. You can save your stuff for later. You don't have to spend it every time, but they need to have the opportunity. It also needs to be consistent. So like at noon every day, we are opening the store and you get to go shopping. Think about that as an adult, right? Like, I know when the store is open. The stores have consistent hours. Amazon is always open. Well, so it's like Target online. I might have a problem. No. So this will be the downfall of most plans, is when they don't allow for opportunities to trade them in. So, but what you'll notice is towards the end of the interval, getting closer and closer to noon, they're sitting quieter and quieter in their desk, raising their hand. They're getting better so they can earn more tokens because they know that they're going to get to go shopping soon. Okay, so you'll see that, just like you saw that trend on our schedules of reinforcement. And so making sure that you balance that. So by the end of your interval, are they going to have enough tokens to go shopping? If they're not, then maybe we need to give a few more tokens, right? But that is a big downfall of allowing them to exchange. So when we combine a token economy with other things, it becomes a really, really effective intervention tool. You're leaving. You saw it at the same time. It happens. All right. So what'll happen if we don't pair our token, right? I told you initially we're going to say like, good job staying away, good job raising your hand, good job quietly, whatever. If we don't pair it with the praise, which is really what I want to be reinforcing to you is that verbal praise, then I can't fade out my tokens as quickly. Okay, because the whole point is to not pay them for things that they have to just do as part of their regular day. But I can give praise whenever. Tokens aren't always going to be available. I don't know what their teacher next year is going to use. I need them to learn this skill as a permanent skill. So if I pair that token with that verbal praise or that social reinforcer, sometimes I give the token with the praise. Sometimes I just give the praise. Are you laughing? What are you thinking? No, but now you have to share. Okay. And then students inform staff of their own appropriate behaviors, right? And we don't really want that. I discourage it. So like what I say is if you want to tell me, why don't you tell me about your friend doing something good that you like? And now I'm going to praise you for praising your friend. And I'm more likely to give you a token. But when you come over and you brag, anybody like a kid that brags a lot or an adult who brags a lot? Right? No, nobody likes that. And so that's what we want to avoid. And so typically what I'll tell students is if you want to share something with me, share something good about your friend. Don't tattle on your friend either, because nobody likes a tattle and nobody likes a bragger. But the better a student's behavior is, the more tokens they earn. Students will also become involved in that reinforcement system. Like I said, tell me when your friends are raising their hands. Tell me if I missed something. Like if your friend does something nice, like hold the door open for somebody or pick up somebody's stuff that they dropped. Reinforcement, you want to keep it standardized and consistent across all students. We want to minimize satiation. So we don't want them to feel like they've gotten too much reinforcement, which really means if the tokens are turned in for things and they've earned all the things, are they going to want to keep working for all those things? Probably not. So that's what you need to do. But that's part of why a token economy can prevent satiation, is because there's always something else to buy, something different on the menu they can choose from. So it's less likely to happen. All right, so some steps of setting up a token economy. Step one, like I said before, you're going to select at least 3-ish behaviors that you're like, this is it. These are the things that I want to see. And think like broadly, because sitting quietly or keeping our hands to ourselves are things that are going to happen across the board all day. And that will give us a lot of opportunity to see fast, immediate change. And then making sure that they are easy for the students to perform and that they're measurable and observable and things that you actually want to see increased. Right? So we want, instead of saying no more calling out, we're going to say increased hand raising. Like I said, we're going to select our backup reinforcers. We're going to ask students what they like. They're going to watch the students. What are some of the things that they do on their own? Right? What kinds of snacks do they bring from home? What kind of snacks do they try to barter from their friends? Right? And then you're going to gather and store and then display the backup reinforcers. So if there's like a menu with pictures of what they can earn, always visible. And then you have the prices on that menu as well. You don't want them to be able to access these items in the store some other way without purchasing them. So, like, trying to think of a good example. If there's a candy bowl and they have to earn candy, I don't want them to like be able to walk past that candy bowl and grab a piece of candy on their own. I need it to be up out of the way so they can't get it unless I'm the one giving it to them.
But one of the things that I want to thinking when it comes to definitely the like, I know kids. and-
Yeah. So like, if you think about what empathy is, right, it's going up to our friend and checking to see how they feel after they fall on the ground. So you're going to reinforce that behavior. Good job checking on your friend. That was great. Good job holding the door open for people. Good job. And so you could say like a kindness thing, you're gonna have to be a little more concrete, maybe helping others. And that's really the thing that you're working towards in that empathy piece, is helping others who are different from ourselves. It's not really what empathy is truly, but that's the behaviors that you're reinforcing. Over time, that feeling will come. But that's, yeah. The kid that is like, you're walking, you're carrying a bunch of stuff and you trip and you fall and everything falls, and most people will just hang on past you. You want to reinforce the kid that stops to pick it up, asks to see if they're okay, helps carry the rest of the items. Those are the behaviors that you're looking for. And I've made everybody feel guilty for walking past people when they trip and fall, or being the person who laughs at them. No.
I would laugh at it.
Yeah. Are you okay? I'm so worried about you. I'm laughing because of my own anxiety, because this is awkward. Yeah, exactly. All right. So with a token economy, for our high functioning kiddos, we're just going to tell them like, hey, we're going to start earning tokens. Here's what we're going to use these for. Some of our students may not get that. So over time, you're going to just condition it. So like, you might have to very quickly go, good job sitting quietly in your token. You want to use your token to buy something? And so you're very quickly going to turn that around, so that over time, you don't have to do it like that back to back, but you need them to recognize that that token is being turned in. Yeah. All right. Like I said, periods of exchange, it gives us that scalloped responding. Keeping it on a consistent schedule is important. I think it's hard to tell a teacher or a parent to just do it whenever they feel like it or whenever it feels right, because what'll happen is they'll forget and then they won't do it, and then it won't happen that day, or won't happen as many times that day as it should have. So, yes.
When you change to like the available, like schedule and starts becoming more, I guess, like it's apart, like we probably see like behavior increase more, or is it like you do a lot of videos that way to have it and from them so that way they won't miss.
Yeah, so their behavior is going to be consistent because you want them to never know when reinforcement is coming. So they're always, or almost always, 80% of the time going to do that behavior, because there's such not a high probability that this instance is going to do it, but like we want them to always think that reinforcement could happen at any time. But also socially, I can reinforce one person in this classroom and I can change a lot of people's behavior. So each time I'm giving a token, although it might be I'm giving a token to Quinn and I'm changing her behavior, I'm also changing the likelihood that other people in the room are going to do it because they watched Quinn get a token. That doesn't work for all people, depending on their like diagnosis status and their attention to others. But for most students, watching other people get rewarded or punished for behavior will change their behavior. It's also why you don't have to experience reinforcement or punishment for things, but like, because you've seen other people or you've heard about other people being rewarded or punished for things. I'll take a poll. How many of you have never received a ticket from a police officer before? Yeah. I just like to give that example because those people still know that that's punishing, right? You still know that if you drive past a police officer and you're speeding, you're probably going to get pulled over, right? So, they don't have to personally experience it to have it impact their behavior. All right. So set up earning requirements. This essentially is like, hey, if you do this behavior, you're going to get this many tokens. This behavior gets this many tokens. This behavior gets this many tokens. And over time, you change this. So if I'm introducing a new behavior and that's a really hard behavior for somebody to do, then I'm going to make that worth more tokens. Okay. Things that are easier or have become easier. So like maybe it's like this in the beginning, but over time, hand raising becomes really easy. So I'm just going to make that 1 token now. Work completion maybe got harder for some people. Maybe it's 10 tokens now. And essentially when we go in, it's like, here are your tokens to the teacher or the parent, and you're just going to give them out as you see fit. You are in control of this, right? I set goals though. So, because if I just say, go do it whenever you feel like it, what happens? They forget. Yeah. And so oftentimes I'm like, well, you need to give at least 5 an hour. Now in a classroom, I'm going to say way more than that because you got a lot of students that you got to reinforce. So, but at home with a single child, you need to give at least 5 rewarding tokens in that hour. And if you didn't, there better be a good reason why you did. And even if they engage in problem behavior during that hour, we can still reinforce something that they did. Yeah, when they're calm. Thank you for calming down. Here's a token. Here's 5 tokens. You know, like, I don't care. I was told I had to get 5 tokens this hour, and man, that was great. But the ratio strain is essentially if you're not giving enough in a specific time frame and you're expecting them to do a lot for 1 token. So banking extra tokens, you always want people to be hungry. We don't want any fat cats. So you can allow them to bank, but typically you set a limit on how much they can bank. Because what would be the problem if we were over banking tokens in a token economy? You can think about it in the real world too. What?
It wouldn't be consistent because they be constantly banking, and then tomorrow they can act like how they want, and they've already got banking.
Yes, and the token loses its reinforcing value because they're not trading it in for the thing that's actually reinforcing. It's the satiation, yeah. So you want them to always kind of be in need of coins. When you think about people in our real economy who have too much money, right? Yeah. We won't judge Jeff Bezos, but we will a little bit. And that is not the right spelling of hoarding. So see, we all make typos. So hoarding, HOARDING. But yeah, we don't want hoarding to occur, and you can increase the cost of items if that starts to happen. And then you always need to be checking, like, is this a problem? Like, Kerrigan hasn't turned in any of their coins. Like, this is a problem. Like, what are we doing? Right? Other general considerations. We're going to fit the complexity of the economy to the individual or the like general average level of the students in my group. So that is a token board, and that is a token board and not a true token economy. So I might use this for an individual who cannot wait until 3 o'clock every day to access the treasure box. And so I let them pick, and I might have a bunch of different cards with pictures of different reinforcers they like. And they were going to pick that out, and they're going to put it there, and they're going to say, like, first you have to work, and then they get a token for every, typically you do that maybe like a minute or every task that they've completed. And then once they get their board filled, 5, 10, like tokens required, then they get that reward immediately. So that's just breaking it down and making it a little bit simpler. They're always getting to see what it is that they're working for in that moment. All right, some other general considerations. It is always easier to do this if you have a pretty similar group, okay? If your group is too different, it's going to be way too difficult to do this, okay? Because you're going to have way too many backup reinforcers. They can't all agree on what they want to work for. And if their behaviors are too variable and different, and you're like, this kid needs me to focus on these behaviors, and this kid needs me to focus on these behaviors, then I've added like 10 behaviors I need that teacher to focus on rather than just a few. All right. Other things that you can talk about is this response cost. Any guesses on what a response cost would be? I alluded to it earlier when I was gonna take Quinn's token for bragging.
Undesirable behavior, like response to something.
The response is the undesirable behavior.
Yeah.
And then what do we do?
Is it punishment because they're taking away a token?
Yeah. Punishment, yeah. So you're charging them, you're fining them essentially for their bad behavior. If you do that though, because what happens when we do punishment, people become more emotional and aggressive, right? So you don't want to rely on a response cost. Sometimes it's necessary. And so if that happens, then we want to take away no more than half of the tokens that they've earned at any given time. And teachers and parents, I mean, you know, bless their hearts. Oh, punishment. Okay, so if you give them the opportunity to take it away, they're being reinforced for that feeling that they get. Making the child cry. It's a terrible thing, but it is what it is. So you have to be careful because teachers and parents will lean really heavily on punishment strategies. And this is supposed to be a reinforcement strategy. All right. And this says no more than 2/3. I would say half. It really depends on how many tokens they have at any given time. But you don't want to take them down to 0. Because once they have 0, what happens? They lose motivation because why? Why should I work? I don't have anything. You took it all away from me. Yeah. Then we already talked about the bootleg reinforcement. So this is just their access to uncontrolled reinforcement, getting it cheaper from somewhere else, accessing it for free in the environment. You just want to minimize that as much as possible. And things that might happen if you have students, especially like older students, they might balk at this and think that you're being ridiculous. You can either ignore it or modify it. And if they argue, like, I'm not doing this, this is silly, like you're trying to pay me and you're trying to manipulate me into doing this, because trust me, there's always that kid and adult, then you just are like, fine, don't do it. Not my problem. If you don't want to access the rewards, then you don't have to access the rewards. Oftentimes what will happen though is they'll watch everybody else get rewarded and then they're like, oh no, I'll do it fine. Everybody else is doing it. Yeah. Arguing oftentimes is like a counter control behavior, which is essentially that the individual doesn't want you to control them. They always want to be in control of themselves and others. And if we argue, we're actually giving them control because they have now controlled your behavior, because now you are engaging in this argument with them. And so the best way to avoid this is important for teens. If you ever have a teen or a toddler, is to just walk away. Cool. Yeah, you do that. That's fine. And then you just walk away and don't engage in the argument. It's really hard because as humans, we're like, I will get the last word. Not with a teenager, you won't.